I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Do the Steelers start Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph in their next game against the Seahawks? We'll discuss that and a lot more here on today's show. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel for all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Everyone, just want to say, hope everyone enjoyed a Merry Christmas. Whether you do or don't celebrate, hope that your day was full of joy, and that you're continuing to enjoy the holidays. Also, happy Kwanzaa to all who celebrate, Umoja on the first day here. But let's get into what everyone wants to talk about here. First of all, I want to acknowledge there will not be any stars and skulls grades for this episode, as it was the holiday. The L-22 didn't even come out, so I wasn't able to get to that. So Allen wasn't free because it was Christmas Eve and Christmas. Didn't feel right to not have the L-22 nor Alan Saunders. We will get to that for the Wednesday episode. So sorry for those waiting for that. But let's get to a much meatier discussion right now, and that's the current quarterback situation of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mason Rudolph or Kenny Pickett. We're going to look more into it, and we're going to look at both sides. First, my prediction here, straight up, before all the other nonsense, is that if Kenny Pickett is 100%, he's the starter. I think it's just the reality. The Steelers believe in this guy. And look, if he's the starter and you believe he is the franchise guy, if he's 100%, you got to let him start. You got to let him cook. You got to say, hey, we believe in you. We're putting you back out there. And if you're sitting there saying, oh, I'm worried about the pressure because there's Mason Rudolph and the pressure behind him because he just played a really good game and now he might be looking over his shoulder, look at this more as an opportunity than you might a challenge. Because if Kenny Pickett folds under the pressure because of a perceived other presence in the competition of the quarterback room, then he's not your guy. In fact, I think the Steelers picked Kenny Pickett because they believed he would accelerate in situations like that and perform better like that because he lives up for the pressure. You want the guy that rises up to the pressure, that steps out in front of adversity and plays better because of it. That's why they got Kenny Pickett in the first place. That's one of the reasons I think he still can be a franchise quarterback, because I think he can rise to that occasion. And if he does rise to the occasion, he's better for it. You found out he can be the guy in the face of pressure. And if he doesn't, same result. You've kind of found that out. But again, let's examine both sides of this debate, because let's be honest, there's a lot of people who've been saying, hey, what about Mason Rudolph? And those people got a lot of boost to that argument with Saturday night. And Mason Rudolph, he earned this boost. 124 passer rating. It's the best passer rating of a Steelers quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger dropped like 30-plus points on the Philadelphia Eagles in 2020. And in fact, it was the first time the Steelers scored at least 30-plus points in the game since the 2020 season, when they did it 3 times with Ben Roethlisberger before his knees gave out and he got old that season. And Mason Rudolph, he read the field. He took what was there. He did what you were asking him to. It's what we've all been saying. The Steelers, it's all the Steelers needed this season. They didn't need Patrick Mahomes, though Patrick Mahomes don't look too great right now. But they didn't need super elite, quarterback play. They just needed steadiness. They needed command. That was enough to settle the rest of the offense. And you saw how everyone else fed off of that. The offensive line blocked better. Najee Harris ran better. George Pickens looked like the best he's ever played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you're a person that's behind Mason Rudolph, you're saying, why would you go away from that? You just had the hot hand. Sure, you're probably even saying, you probably don't even believe that Mason Rudolph is the franchise guy and the long-term guy. But right now, your offense hasn't had a spark, not just all this past season, but all the past 3 seasons. And you finally found a spark, and Rudolph was part of that. And it might be the one time that this offense has done something like this. So if your system hasn't produced, you got to go with a hot hand. And if you're again, I'm saying there's merit to this argument, because if say you start Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett is your backup. By the way, Mitch Trubisky is not your number 2 quarterback in any situation right now. It's either Mason or Kenny or Mason. Let's just get that out there. So if you believe Rudolph should be the starter, you can even argue saying, hey, Kenny can be ready and he can be the guy that comes off the bench if Rudolph stinks it up, and then we see what he's got. Ben once sat behind Landry Jones because they weren't sure if he was 100%, and he did pretty good in that game too when that happened, because Landry Jones ended up getting hurt. So there's arguments there, but let's talk about the case for Kenny Pickett. I don't care much about the evaluation part of this, about, you got to see who he is if he's for next guy. No, you start your best player. And if he's 100% and you believe he's your best man and you gave him the starting quarterback job and you think he's the franchise quarterback, you start him. Now, I will say this, you better be right, because if you're wrong, Kenny Pickett plays poorly, that will eat into the team. It will cause questions and invite division into the team. And that's real pressure. But again, you want your quarterback to stand up to that pressure. You want them to thrive in it, to be like, hey, man, forget all that. I'm the man. I'm here to lead. And that's who I think Kenny Pickett has been at some crucial times. We've talked about the clutch gene that he's had at several points already in his first 2 years in the NFL. And you can say whether they're luck or not, but he's done it so many times already. I think that if Kenny Pickett is able to keep building like that, he can find his feet under him. And let's be real, Kenny Pickett's had plenty of obstacles. The offensive line has been makeshift the last 2 years. They've had some good moments this year. They had some good moments toward the end of last year, but they have hardly been consistent. And Pickett, when he played against the Bengals, while he didn't score 34 points, he was still a good player in that game. He had a 97.8 passer rating. He had a touchdown pass kind of dropped or should have been challenged, with the Deontay Johnson play. If that was called or if that was called a touchdown or just held on to by Johnson for longer in that play, he would have had a 112.2 passer rating, and that would have been his best game of his career. So while the offense didn't score 34 points with him, they did move the ball against the Bengals, and a Jaylen Warren fumble here, a mistake, and a drop touchdown there. Maybe there's a different situation that's outside of his control that leads to those kind of production. But also, let's acknowledge that was also the first game without Matt Canada at the offensive coordinator position, and the offense started strong against the Cardinals before he got hurt, and that was just the second game without Matt Canada, offensive coordinator. This group has been trying to find its feet all season long, and this is the first game that you could say the offense had found its footing. And maybe it's less about Mason Rudolph and more about, hey, they just kind of needed to settle with their new situation and the power structure of how they organize throughout their weeks. Maybe that's part of it. And maybe you'd want to see what he can do with, and I think you'd want to see Kenny Pickett play with rest, with time to prepare. He's had time to step back, look at himself a little bit longer. You heard about how Mason Rudolph talked about. We showed you the clip at the podium. He said there's so many times he sat there and he could have just mailed it in and not focused in practice, but he just went through every rep, practiced, mentally what he would do. Kenny Pickett's now had some time to do that. Just think about what he would do, how he would handle different situations. Again, if you think he's the starting quarterback, you go back to him. You believe in your guy. You put him back out there. And I will say there's this factor to the Mason Rudolph situation. And this is less about Mason Rudolph and just more about the reality of backup quarterbacks in the NFL. You might want to not get fooled by the Jeremy Lynn factor of everything, or the Lynn sanity factor, because Mason Rudolph deserves credit for what he did. But guess who also deserves credit for what they did leading up to that Steelers game? Jake Browning, a backup quarterback who in his last 3 starts had the Bengals offense averaging over 30 points a game. And we've seen backups plenty of times in the NFL look really good and then turn into pumpkins because they're backups for a reason and they can't do things consistently. I thought it was a really funny comparison of a TikToker, Trap House Sports, who does a really funny TikToker. Go check out his stuff. I find he's like really hilarious. But he said about the Steelers game, the Jeremy Lynn run, or the Lynn sanity run of Jake Browning, is over. And what he means, if you remember Jeremy Lynn, there was a guy in the early 2010s for the Knicks, comes off, he was a nobody, and all of a sudden he was just on fire for about a 2-week period, and everyone's like, it's Lynn sanity. And then after he had to keep doing it for weeks on weeks, eventually it was kind of like, okay, he had a hot streak, but he isn't one of the best players in the NBA. And then eventually he fizzled out. And again, it doesn't exclude the good things that he did, but there's a reason why he's not going to get a max contract in the NBA and he's not a superstar player. The same reason why Joe Burrow is going to be the quarterback as soon as he's healthy next year, and Jake Browning's going to be a backup. And also why maybe we shouldn't overhype one game for Mason Rudolph. And again, this isn't less about Mason Rudolph. This is about Kenny Pickett. If you believe he's the guy, put him back out there. Personally, I still think Kenny Pickett can grow into the franchise quarterback with the right situation. But you can argue that this hasn't been the right situation. You can say the offensive coordinator position, the offensive line situation, You could look at the receivers and how there's needed to be some maturity there. And, I think that next year with a better center and maybe a better tackle that's not named Dan Moore with Broderick Jones out there, maybe you see better stuff. Again, I think if Pickett is 100%, you start him. But if there's any questions, say, hey, Kenny, we're having you ready, but we want to make sure you're 100% healthy before we put you back out there as the definite starter. We're going to give Mason another shot at this, but be ready as the backup. But all things we've heard, it's looking like the Steelers are going to start Kenny Pickett, and we'll see where that is. Wherever you fall on this debate, let me know in the YouTube comment section or on Twitter or X at Carter Critiques. I hear you out. I think it will be Kenny Pickett, and if he's 100%, I think it should be Kenny Pickett. But if he's not, I think Mason Rudolph deserves another shot that he should be able that he can hold it down for you in another key game and keep what you got going. But right now, the Steelers situation is bigger than just the quarterback. It's about the team, because this was a very dark hour for the team, and they responded in a very bright way. I want to talk about that team a little bit more and how it's trying to rally right now on the other side of this break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you that this show is also brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in America. You could get ready for the NFL playoffs and start making all your bets on FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in the country. And right now, new customers to FanDuel get $150 back in bonus bets if they just hit on any $5 money line bet. If you really believe the Steelers are going to beat the Seahawks this weekend, put it down on the money line and put that $5 down on the money line. And if you're right, you get $150 back in bonus bets that you can use towards anything. And that's including all their spreads bets, their player props, their overs and unders, so much more. Future bets, anything that you want, and across all sports. It's not just the NFL. You can do NBA, NHL, college sports. So many ways to win, so many chances, and it's the best time to join FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in America. So to do so, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off your NFL playoff hopes by hoping to make more money there by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get the offer to make sure that if you hit on your next $5 money line bet, you can get $150 back in bonus bets, and that's at FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here. We talked a lot about the quarterback position, but let's talk about the team, because that win on Saturday was bigger than just the quarterback situation. It was bigger than just Mason Rudolph and George Pickens. It was about the team, because they rallied in so many ways. It wasn't just the quarterback and one wide receiver that played well. The offensive line played really well. The running backs played very well. Even wide receivers not named George Pickens played very well. The entire defense played very well, even with a ton of backups, and not just backups, the backups of the backups of the backups. That was a concerted effort. They blocked out a lot of noise, a lot of negativity, just pointed at that team from local and national media, from everything. Lots of pressure on them to fail. And there was heat on players. People talking about, oh, Mason Rudolph starting. Oh, good luck there, guys. Najee Harris, you're a bum, you're a bust. George Pickens, you're a whiny cry. All these things we've heard all season long. The defense, there was no way they were going to perform after the way that they played against the Colts. They quit against the Colts. All these things that were said about them. And what did they do? They rallied. They circled around each other. They believed in each other. They believed in themselves. They fought back, and they got a must win against the division opponent. Nobody pointed fingers. They just rallied, and they found answers. Do they have leaders on offense? I don't know. And we've talked about that. That's something that they need to have. I'm not sure if they actually do have yet. But I want you to listen here to Najee Harris in the Steelers locker room after the game, because he was asked about George Pickens, and the Steelers at every point could have laid George Pickens out to bear with the lack of effort on the Jaylen Warren play, and then his comments in the media afterwards, and how everything was just, a lot of people saying, we had former Steelers like Merrill Hodge, Ryan Clark pointing at George Pickens. He's part of the problem. He's the problem. They could have left him out there. The Steelers never did. They rallied around him. They protected him. And even then after the game, Najee Harris was like, nah, we ain't having that. Here, listen to Najee Harris. Also, this clip courtesy of Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com, our friends over there. Thanks so much for Nick and Alan for all the great work they do. But here was Najee Harris when being asked about George Pickens after the Steelers went over the Bengals.
George took a lot for a couple plays last week, and this week he answered some questions and kind of went about it, and he drew a lot of fire for it. How do you think he handled this week?
What questions did he
He
answer?
was asking about an effort on a blocking play last week, and he said
What
that
was the question?
he was
Like,
trying.
what did
He
he
was
answer?
it was on a Jalen touchdown.
No, I'm
It
saying
was-
but
he
who
said he was
asking
trying
that?
to avoid a Tank Dell situation.
Well,
where-
I'm just saying, but
yeah.
who was asking that though?
I mean, it's just a general about
But who was asking?
about that play. None of us specifically. Someone in the locker room.
Someone in the media.
Yeah,
Someone in the media, though.
Yeah.
My point is, it's someone in the media. Like,
Yeah.
but we don't care about that.
Right.
Like, respectfully, like, they're not doing what we do. So, like, there was no questions that need to be answered or nothing like that. Like, he played well today. He practiced hard. He played. He's a good player for us. I mean, there's clips of him blocking guys off the ball, running them off, and like throwing them. So like, why is it a question? It's always getting blown up when somebody do something wrong, but they hide the good. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is. It's a sport we play. But I feel like there was no questions that need to be answered. He did well today. So did Mitch, or not Mitch, Mason.
For when his former players saying that about him, you think they're getting it wrong too? Or are they missing the mark because they're not in here?
What former players?
Ryan Clark was one of them.
I mean, it's different from looking. I can understand that because people are looking outside in; they're not inside the building. So, I mean, from a play, you obviously can say that, but us players, we look at him and be like, well, we understand. We don't feel no type of way towards him. GPs, we all make mistakes. So I feel like, it's just, Ryan Clark obviously is a player who played here, but we didn't feel no type of way towards GP or anything like that.
That's a guy right there in Najee Harris who continuously tries to protect the locker room, as any player and coach should. Mike Tomlin does it all the time, and that's why when everyone says, oh, he just says the same cliches all the time in his press conferences, and they're getting mad about that, that's because he's not letting us in. And I'm saying us as the media. Part of our job is to ask those questions. You've heard me ask those questions. You've heard me be roasted by Tomlin. Hey, I told you how last week I got roasted by Najee Harris because he didn't like one of my questions. It's their job, and I don't take it personally. I get it. My dad was a coach. I can't tell you how many times he always told me, think of it from the player's perspective, as far as they're not trying to let you in because they want to protect everybody. They protect the locker room. That's what teams are supposed to do. I think that's the right demeanor. And the offense needs more players like that who can lead and say the right things. But don't mistake that defense of George Pickens and that defense of the locker room as leniency. We've heard that he had to address the team. It wasn't like everyone's just like, it's okay, George, you cannot try. It was, no. We're going to challenge him in ways. Mike Tomlin's, Rob, they've been having meetings. George Pickens admitted, like, hey, like we have had talks. And they are doing it. But Mike Tomlin said, I'm not going to give you that pound of flesh. And I think that's how it should be. They own up in front of the team, and the team handles it inside. And the media, the fans, you don't necessarily get that pound of flesh. You know what your pound of flesh should be? It should be the next time the Steelers win. And sometimes that win might come right away. On Saturday, it did. But I think that's the best kind of pound of flesh. And I think that's part of the culture that we have, that we've seen a lot from the media and requesting when there's pain. And I get it from fans. You're fans. You're passionate. You're upset your team lost. You're feeling it. You want something to pin it on. You want something to point your anger towards. But let's be realistic. Sometimes you just get beat. And sometimes people do fall up short. But the best way to do it isn't going to be pointing fingers, isn't going to be, a public lashing, a public crucifixion. Say, we're not gonna put this guy, we're gonna put this guy on Front Street in front of everybody. We're gonna hold him to the light and force everybody to point and laugh at him. No, they're gonna rally around each other. They'll do it amongst themselves because accountability is important. But you have to rally around each other. You have to believe in each other, and doing it the way that I think some fans wanted to do with their pound of flesh, where the whole team says George Pickens, he's a whiny crybaby. We need him to stop doing that. We should trade him away. They're not going to give you that. It's just a reality, and I think that the team not doing that is a sign of the team not folding. It's a sign of the team sticking together through adversity, and it's a sign of the team fighting through that adversity and rallying to keep building. And they need to keep rallying. They did not win a Super Bowl with the Bengals game. They know that they need to win out if they want to have hopes at making the playoffs. By the way, if they win out, they have a pretty good shot at making the playoffs because of what happened this past weekend. And it's not a given that they're going to win out. That Ravens team looks pretty doggone good right now, even if they do play their backups in week 18. But again, if you remember Alex Highsmith's comments after the game, I asked him about how the team practiced. He was like, yeah, we practiced all right, but we got to practice better. And he was talking about how they have to keep building, they have to keep moving. This team is still hungry. And they know they blew opportunities against the Cardinals, against the Patriots, against the Colts, and even earlier against the Jaguars and the Texans and the Niners. They know that this team has missed chances. And against the Browns, they know that they have work to do. And I think it's good that they're saying, hey, you're Najee Harris. He's like, who said that question? The media? We don't care. We're focused on ourselves. That's what you want. And I think that's a good sign. Doesn't mean they're going to win out. Doesn't mean even win one of their next 2 games. But that's a good sign that their heads are in the right place right now instead of worrying about things that are outside of their control, outside of the locker room. What will determine who this team really is their determination to finish strong. And it is about how they finish strong. It's not about their media comments. It's not about what pound of flesh they give you. It's not about public whippings of the player that you think is most at fault or the coach you think is most at fault. It's about executing on the field and being the better player and the better team in the right moments. Now, right now, there's one guy who's executing a lot. There's a few guys who are executing a lot, but I want to focus on one guy who played really well in this past game and has played really well all year, and that's the rookie, Joey Porter Jr. We'll talk about him on the other side of this break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still got a lot to talk about. But first, we want to remind you this show is also brought to you by GameTime, the website and the app that you got to go to right now. Their website's gametime.co, but you can download the app right to your phone to get your favorite tickets to your favorite events without it being stressful. GameTime is an app that allows you a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sporting events, concerts, comedy events, theater events, anything near you that you can get tickets for. GameTime is going to help you find them. They give you killer deals even up to the last minute, even up to an hour after your event has started if you're running late. And they give you an opportunity to take advantage of the best prices. And they have a best price guarantee that can't be beat. The GameTime app, you download right to your phone. You could book those tickets. Instead of when you're walking up to the arena for the next game, there's no more Steelers home games, but say you want to go to a Penguins game. Say you want to go to a Pitt basketball game. Say you want to go to a big concert coming up and you didn't buy tickets because you were hoping to find the best prices, and you're walking around, you're seeing the guys saying, I need tickets with their scalper prices. You don't know those scalper prices. They sound good, but you don't know if those tickets are real. You don't know if those tickets are giving you good seats. But what you do know is when you go into GameTime, you're going to see the view from those seats. You're going to see the better prices than what you see at the ticket booth, and you're going to get the right value for it. And GameTime's so confident that they're going to give you the best prices that they say if you find tickets in the same section and row for less on a different app or a different service, they will credit you 110% of the difference in those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. And again, that's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here. Let's focus specifically on Joey Porter Jr. We've talked about quarterbacks. We talked about the team. Let's focus on one player for a little bit here. And he is exceeding his expectations right now. To explain what I mean here, if you go to Next Gen Stats and you look at how he performed against the Bengals, and this was a big matchup. He shadowed T. Higgins for most of the game. 32 of his 40 routes that T. Higgins ran, he was covered by Joey Porter Jr. On those plays, T. Higgins was targeted twice, only caught one pass for 15 yards. That's a pretty good performance. And on the season, it's not the first big-name wide receiver he's had to go up against. He's gone up against DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Christian Kirk, Christian Watson, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins now, and he's done well. And the only wide receiver who you can even say got the better of him in the game was Amari Cooper, who, by the way, lit it up this past weekend, by the way. And that was only for 34 yards in a game where they gave up, 17 points? 16 points? That's the worst that you have on Joey Porter Jr. right now as far as a wide receiver abusing him. I'll take that. And that's a rookie. On the season, he's been targeted 47 times. He's allowed 22 catches for only 298 yards. Only 94 of those yards are yards after the catch. That's still under 100 yards after the catch. He's only allowed one passing touchdown. He also has an interception, a huge one, by the way, that saved the Steelers' bacon against the Ravens in the first game. And he has 5 passes broken up, and he's allowing a passer rating of 65.7 right now. Of cornerbacks who have his amount of snaps this year, that's 7th best in the NFL. And one of the questions was tackling. Could he tackle? It's been less of an issue. It's an 11.8% missed tackle rate, which isn't bad. It's in like the top 40 of NFL cornerbacks. It's right around the rates of guys like Xavier Howard, Denzel Ward, L'Jarius Sneed. Huge, and he made a huge tackle in the red zone against the Bengals on a pop pass in open space when he also had to beat a blocker on that play. He is stepping up. He's growing, and he's a rookie. He's 23 years old. And saying that, he still has problems. His biggest problem right now, penalties. He has 12 penalties right now. That's second most among NFL cornerbacks. And it's also not a huge problem right now because, for one, he's a rookie. There's also, if you look at the numbers, there's also other top performing cornerbacks out there with similar penalty numbers. L'Jarius Sneed, who's performed very well for the Chiefs, by the way, he has 15 penalties this year. Charvarius Ward for the Niners, 10. Tariq Woolen for the Seahawks, 9. And all these guys are similar to Joey Porter Jr. They're allowing pass ratings of less than 82 on the year. So they have not been a guy they have not been guys to get picked on by quarterbacks this year. Joey Porter Jr. is growing and growing fast. And Patrick Peterson, a guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, compared Porter to himself just last week. And we had it on the show. Here's Patrick Peterson again talking about Joey Porter Jr. and his confidence in him.
I was just going to ask, as far as like Joey, what has he shown that you can trust him to do so many different things now in this team?
His confidence, and his willingness to want to take on that challenge. You don't find a lot of young guys like that coming into the league with that mentality. I tell them all the time, remind me of myself a lot because I had some of the same responsibilities that he have right now as a rookie. So it's just the sky's just the limit for him. He's only going to continue to get better. His confidence is going to continue to grow, and I just want him to continue to lean on me to help him, find his way through this journey.
That's Patrick Peterson talking about Joey Porter Jr. And again, this is Joey Porter Jr., who is already making lots of headway, and he's just a 23-year-old rookie. He has plenty of time to keep growing for the Steelers. If he does become another pillar piece of this defense for the future, that means TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Alex Highsmith, and him all are going to be key parts of the future. Cam Hayward's probably going to be around for at least another year or two, but let's also be real. Cam Hayward, he's on the back end of his career. He's obviously not in his prime anymore, but still, he's a leader, and I think that he sticks around for at least another year, maybe another 2 years if the Steelers are lucky. But speaking of Watt, by the way, currently has 17 sacks. I believe that still leads the NFL right now. And if he gets 3 more sacks in the next 2 games, TJ Watt will become the 4th player in NFL history to have multiple 20-sack seasons. He would join Deacon Jones, Mark Gastineau, and J.J. Watt. I'd say that's pretty good company and kind of putting himself in Defensive Player of the Year conversations again. But this is about Joey Porter Jr., not TJ Watt. But again, with Joey Porter Jr. in building, you like what you've seen out of Keanu Benton. He's coming along. There's got guys like Nick Herbig growing up in the wings. Maybe Corey Trice can be something next year. And this is still a defense that you could probably add at cornerback next year. Patrick Peterson looking pretty good at safety. So maybe you move him to safety and you get another guy at safety next year. Get a younger safety, a younger defensive lineman, add to the unit. Maybe you get healthy linebackers next year. That's a unit that can cook. So I think Joey Porter Jr., if he keeps going in the right direction, the way that he's going right now, he can be your shutdown corner. And there's still a lot of potential for this defensive unit to be one of the best in the NFL. And I really think that's certainly still in the realm of possibility right now. In fact, going into Sunday, this is not accounting for all the points that weren't scored on Sunday, but with their points per game rate, they're 7th right now in the NFL. And that's, again, not accounting for the Sunday games. Excuse me if I miss one there. But even so, they're top 10 as a defense with no linebackers, with no safeties, with Patrick Peterson moving to safety, with a rookie cornerback as your best cornerback on the field. Cam Hayward missed 2 months. Minkah Fitzpatrick has missed like 6 games, maybe more if I'm forgetting some. There's potential there to be an even better defense than they have been this year. And Joey Porter Jr. can very much be a huge part of that if he continues to grow in the right ways. So all that being said, the Steelers, they're hungry. I think Joey Porter Jr. is hungry. He hasn't shied away from any number 1 wide receiver he's had to face all season long. And I think the Steelers team is hungry, and they're not going to shy away from any of the challenges in these next 2 games. Mike Tomlin talks today, Tuesday at noon, I'll be there on hand at the Steelers facility. We'll get you, we'll talk about what he says in the show tomorrow, as well as get you my stars and skulls grades. Hopefully with Alan Saunders back on the show, we'll see his availability. It's the holidays, even though Christmas is over now, and we'll see about his availability. We want to respect everyone's schedules and such. We hope that all of you are having a happy holidays and that you're getting to enjoy time with the family. Love, shout out and love to all my family who I got to enjoy Christmas with, and those I didn't get to enjoy Christmas with. Appreciate y'all for helping me kind of step away from work and the busy lifestyle we got here covering sports here in Pittsburgh. I'm Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette from the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Curtis. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel for all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. We'll see you again here tomorrow, right on the Locked On Steelers podcast.